I'm your host, Drew Neiser, live from New York City. In my book, Renegade Marketing, I emphasize the importance of getting organizational buy-in before you launch a major strategic initiative, including a rebranding. And by the way, in the book, I talk about a story where that did not happen and it was a disaster. It may sound like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many times this often proven truth is overlooked in the name of I know what's right, or we don't have time. To paraphrase Dara Royer, now the CMO of Syracuse University, she said, being right is useless if the whole organization doesn't buy into your thinking. And that means you, the CMO, need to bring people along with you, making them part of the process. In some cases, feel like it was really their idea. All right, with that, let's bring on Melanie Marcus, CMO of Surescripts and star of episode 9 of Renegade Marketers Live, and now on episode 9 of CMO Huddles Studios. Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Drew.
Great to see you again. How
Great to
are
see
you
you.
and where are you?
Oh, it's great to see you. And I am well, and I'm in Washington, D.C.
All right. All right. Well, we have to do a lunch huddle. I'm hoping in July we'll be in DC.
That'd
Anyway,
be great.
so you've been at Surescripts now for 6 years. And one thing we've never talked about on the show, what does Surescripts do?
Sure. Well, Surescripts is a health information network. We exchange health intelligence across the country to the tune of, almost 22 billion times a year. If your physician is sending a prescription from your physician's office to the pharmacy, or when you're with your physician, you see your medication history there, or if you see some kind of clinical history from another provider's office, it is often Surescripts behind making that exchange possible.
It's so funny. I often wondered how that sort of magically happens, right? I mean, you're at the doctor, you get your prescription, and next thing you know, you stop by Walgreens or CVS, and bingo, there it is. Okay, very cool. And also the fact that they say, so you're on this drug now, huh?
That's
And
right.
it's not the doctor that prescribed it. And that's, yeah.
That's
Uh,
right.
okay, got that. Cool. So, you're on the show because you led a big strategic initiative. Could you share the background and the time frame for where you were to where you wanted to get to?
Sure. I thought about this a lot because there are many of these initiatives. In my job at Surescripts, we are a growing and changing company, and there is plenty of change to lead. So, but I'm going to go back to the first one when I joined Surescripts 6 years ago and was brought on with really a change mandate to the company had just brought out probably 5 or 6 pretty big products to the market. And the products were in the form of like transactions that were being transacted across the network. And they really didn't know how to talk about them. There was no content, no framework, no infrastructure, nothing. And in fact, they'd go to trade shows, and my new boss, our CEO at the time, would say, Melanie, every single person has something different to say about Surescripts. Help us. And so the first thing that I had to do was change and create a brand architecture and naming process. And it couldn't just be that. Like that's marketing jargon, right? That's not very exciting. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I couldn't use those words, but that's what we did. And in 9 months later, from when I joined, we brought out an entirely new way to go to market with a great way to talk about the products that we were bringing to market, great way to talk about the network that we use, and so forth. And that all by itself has lasted us for almost 6 years. It's funny, I sit here talking about that today, and today, literally, we are in the process of evolving it very quickly. So it's changing as we speak, but it's lasted us for a good long time.
Yeah. Well, and first of all, the thing that 9 months, for those of you who've never been through a transformational process like that, is actually pretty fast. And second, to last 6 years, I got to say, the only way that ever happens is if the same CMO is in the seat, because there is a tendency to just, well, as a CMO, I've seen this where it's like, wow, we need to redo it. But it's a testament to the work that you did that enabled it to last this long. So
Yes. Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah.
process of what you went through, how'd you get buy-in, and that's this is where
Yeah.
it gets really sticky.
Sure, it does. And it was, remember, 9 months from when I started. So this is my first 9 months on the job. And so the key here is I was brought in with a change mandate. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a lot throughout, because if you don't have one, you need to create one. I had one, and it was pretty much from the top down. I've been in other situations, including at Surescripts, where I need to create them, but I didn't need to create it. So the other piece of this is that as I brought it through the whole organization, in my learning the organization too, I had to make sure I wasn't using marketing jargon. I was really taking this straight to how is it going to help the business? The business, we brought out these new products, that's fantastic. And we need to be able to, to sell them. And here's how this is going to help sell. And so that was a key component. But really, the biggest challenge here was culture change. Culture change, not only culture change for how do we go to market, which was not insignificant, but also culture change in how do you view marketing. Marketing was not viewed as the trusted partner to help bring a strategic initiative through the organization. So I had to gain trust, and marketing was an order taker. I had a very, very small team at the time. So I had to gain enough trust to say, hey, we got to stop order taking, to my colleagues at the executive team, like, we are stopping order taking. We will do these things, but this is why, and this is what you can expect as a result. And then I had to deliver iteratively so that they couldn't wait 9 months for a deliverable. They had to see something early. And I would say one of the things that really held us was that very early on, 3 months into the job, aligned with our head of sales at the time, which was also key, we brought out a pilot. Like, okay, this is not perfect, we know, but this is a version of how you could talk to the market about what we've got. Use this for a little while, give us feedback, we're going to go do the work. And that helped tremendously.
Wow. Okay. There was so much in there to unpack. I have to check on a few things. But one is important in all of this in that first year is that you do have a quick win or a quick something to show for your efforts. I'm curious, and gaining trust it's like, well, we're going to change our culture. We're going to change our go to market. We're going to change how we talk about the brand. Trust me, this is going to work. What kinds of things did you do to gain that trust?
Well, I mean, I had to put together a roadmap on how it was going to happen, and involve my colleagues, involve others throughout the organization, including my own executive colleagues, in that work. And while we were doing that, I had to methodically deliver on the things that we promised out of that, order taking. We had to deliver some of those order taking things, right? We had to deliver it in hopefully a better way than we were before. So, trust was involving people. Interviews were and have and continue to be a key component of a change process. I'm sure we'll talk about that, making sure you get all of the voices into the process without being a big committee. Get all the voices and listen really carefully and reflect it back to everybody so they feel heard, across the organization, people feel heard. And it doesn't mean that you're going to take every piece of it hook, line, and sinker. It's part of a bigger, input into a process. So that's some of it.
Yeah, as I'm thinking back on as you're talking, I'm thinking of times when big brand ideas got implemented and when they didn't. And one of the things where it can die, you can do all the interviews, but if the CEO doesn't feel it, you're done. And so I'm curious how you involved, particularly the CEO in the process.
Sure. So the CEO, well, and has helped me because, as I said, we've evolved this brand, this work over the 6 years. It didn't just stay stagnant. We evolved it. And one of the key, I'll use this word, which he brought to me, which was, be a thought partner. So I wouldn't always go to my boss with a brand new, presentation and pitch for him. I would sit down and go, here's where I'm at. I just need your thought partnership in this. Where are you at? What are your thoughts? We do this regularly in our one-on-ones so that I knew where he was, he knew where I was, and it wasn't always just trying to pitch him.
God, that's such a smart way of doing it. And I just, as you think about persuasion, particularly when it's a CEO, it's not that it has to be their idea, but they do have to think it through with you. And if you deny that opportunity, they're really going to just look for the problems.
Absolutely. You know what? In the end, the brand, the CEO is the front face of the brand. They have to believe it. And I'm
Right.
sure that if they've been in role for any amount of time, even if they're brand new, we've had a new CEO in the last 10 months, and they've got a view on what the brand could be, should be. And, it's best they're there for a reason too. So.
Yeah. Interesting. And so I love the, also want to go back to the order taking. I've heard that term a lot for folks that, again, in this sort of, where marketing is just in support of sales, just creating the present. Hey, we got a pitch next week, create a presentation, or hey, we got a pitch next week. We need some content, and learning how to say no nicely, so
Yeah.
that you can do it. At the same time, though, you need to deliver some of those things, as you said, to buy yourself time, because ultimately it was 9 months.
That was my riskiest thing, is saying to the head of product innovation, I'm not going to deliver everything you thought we were going to deliver this year because I need to do this. And it was an act of trust on both of our sides to do that.
Amazing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll come back to you, Melanie, on that, but thank you. A
Great.
great start to the conversation. Next up, let's bring on Grant Johnson, CMO of Billtrust. Grant, there you are. It's magic. Grant has been on this show. Let's see, was the star of episode 13, 28, 43, 47 of the predecessor to this show, Renegade Marketers Live. Hello, Grant. How are you and where are you?
I'm doing great, Drew, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I'm in sunny Southern California.
Yay. Well, right now we're in sunny New York City. Of course, it's rained every day this week, and maybe it'll rain again today. Anyway, no rain in the studio here. So, um, I'm just curious, as you heard Melanie and talk about her process and thinking back before you joined Billtrust, but thinking back on selling in big programs, what resonated with you as you were listening to her?
I'll be honest, Melanie, it all resonated. It was like deja vu all over again. As you know, I've been acquired 7 times. I've acquired more than 20 companies as part of the executive teams, and just the whole way that she approached it methodically, and getting buy-in, and setting and managing expectations, sequentially driving the change, proof point by tangible change, and just the fact that it's a change process. And as human beings, we don't like change as much as one might expect.
Yeah, right. No, it's hard. I mean, and this is hard because, and what I really appreciated is that you're doing the right thing when this is really a change of go to market and a change of culture. Then you are really having the impact that marketing can have. So let's talk about Billtrust. You've been there 5 months. What does Billtrust do?
Very simply, we help companies get paid faster, which in this economy is pretty cool. We're in the office of finance, office of CFO, digital transformation, lots of ways to describe what we do is order to cash. So for companies that have lots of customers, we make it easier for the customers to submit their invoices to their companies, and so that our customers can get paid faster. And who doesn't want that?
And so, and I'm curious, because one thing Melanie mentioned is that you need a mandate for change. And if you don't, you need to create it. Were you given a mandate? And if so, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I was given a mandate for change, but I mean, it's up to you. I think, I'd spent more than 3 years at my last company, and that's probably a bigger change process to talk about than
Okay,
what I did in the last 5 months, if that's okay with you.
sure. Let's do it. So let's talk
Yeah.
about where you were and where you ended up.
So at Burst, I'm having a conversation. Everything starts with a catalyst with the CRO, and we're talking about how we're syncing up with 6 different business units. And so, we sync with the executive team, and there's 9 folks, and there's 6 different business units. And I said to him, "Stop the madness." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, like it's not really efficient that we're going to market on a global basis, then we're also going to go to market on a 6 different business unit basis. And then we're having to sync with 6 different GMs." And so I was in an executive offsite meeting where we had a facilitator, and this was an organic. It's just like I didn't enter the company planning to do this. This was an organic catalyst, and the facilitator said, "Well, anything's a safe zone. Anything can be recommended." And I said, "Why don't we blow up the business units?" And there were 6 GMs sitting in the room when I said that. So that was pretty controversial, but fast forward, we all made that decision uh, to drive that really strategic initiative, make the company more efficient, and we ended up with 3 segments: small business, mid-size, or corporate, and enterprise. That meant there were implications on leadership, organizational structure, business processes, and quite frankly, a much easier approach to measuring success. We're measuring across 3 segments instead of 6.
Um, so yeah, it took a little courage, and confidence, and obviously you've done this before, so you know that in this particular case, if you didn't blow that up, you wouldn't really have a chance to be successful. I think I'm guessing, I'm inferring from that it is that, there's some problems that marketing can solve. And sometimes it's an organizational problem that if you don't fix it, marketing's kind of, dead in the water.
Well, you're absolutely right. You and I met, earlier in my career. I had brought together 3 separate businesses, Perceptive, ReadSoft, and Kofax. And this is bringing together 6 businesses. And you're absolutely right. One of my mandates was to unify under the lead brand in Burst these 6 distinct, brand identities and business units, if you will. And I didn't have staff that I could dedicate to all 6 business units. We were in a marketing shared services world anyway. Certainly, we could dedicate more resources to the larger segments, but it was just the best chance for marketing and sales to succeed. Sales leader could have said, "Hey, I can't do my job this way," but to some extent, with dedicated salespeople by business unit, it wasn't as difficult as we all know that marketing tends to have a smaller organization than sales. That's just they're not quota carrying. We're not quota carrying, and that's why. But you're right. That was really key to what became a very successful, 3 years of driving, change and growth.
So as I think about this, so, I mean, one of the pivotal moments was, one, you had the insight, and so did your CRO, that this, or at least talk to your CRO, that you had to blow up the business. But the fact that you had an outsider there to sort of facilitate that is it must have taken a little bit of the heat off of you, and but also that everybody was there and could wrestle it to the ground. So at least everybody in terms of the executive committee, and again, where these things fall apart, it feels to me, is like when marketing is either trying to do it on their own, it hasn't built a coalition and consensus at the executive level.
You are absolutely right. And I would say it wasn't one and done. There was certain debate, discussion, and following. There was an individual and one of our executives who was the ostensible head of the business units on the sort of the executive team. And he and I debriefed afterwards. Says, "Well, I didn't know if you were talking about people or structure or process." I said, "No, I was talking about structure." And he said some of my GMs, and they all ended up having different roles, which was great. One became a chief of staff, and one moved into sales. And it wasn't a cost reduction exercise; it was an efficiency gain exercise. And after I sort of explained the detailed reasons behind it in more depth, people understood it. That enabled him to support the GMs in making the transition versus resisting it, because you can declare a change, and I've done this globally, and then you leave the country or leave the business unit discussion, and then people go back to the old way of doing things. So it really takes, and Melanie was talking about this, you have to hit those touch points again and just make sure that it's taken hold. So before you go 3 steps ahead and nobody's with you, that doesn't work either.
Well, and I'm just thinking of normal, when the old notion of buyer's remorse, right? We come together, we make the purchase, and we go, oh God, I really wouldn't. And so you've got to make these. This is not one and done, as you said. This is a process of making it stick. I also wonder how your CEO felt at that moment, because I mean, in some ways, CEO should be driving this kind of a thing, or certainly embracing it, and they have to.
Well, and it's a great point, because literally a couple months before that meeting, this was during COVID. We actually met near the beach. Our CEO flew out to Manhattan Beach, if you've ever been there, and the CRO, the CEO, myself, were talking about it, and we just started describing, the two of us, to him, that hey, we can keep operating this way, but isn't there a better way? Shouldn't we be thinking? But I said, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how best to drive that change. Obviously, you two will need to be instrumental in facilitating it. And so we sort of had an early discussion. And so he supported the idea, as did the president at the time. And, had they both said, well, we can't deal with that now, I wouldn't be here talking about the change that happened for the better.
Right. And I think that's so pivotal. You can make a lot of things happen, as you did. And, by the way, the other thing is, you're thinking about reorganizing. If that's the kind of organizing by customer type is really smart, because it says customers are our most important thing in our universe, as opposed to the business units are the most important thing. But if you hadn't had that conversation with the CEO, and basically saying, I got your back, you're done. It's not going to happen, because too many people will just go around and do it. All right. Well, very cool. Thank you for that. We're now going to talk to Lauren Boyman, CMO at KPMG USA. Hello, Lauren. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Drew. Thanks for
And
having
so,
me.
and where are you this fine day?
I am also in New York City. I'm probably a couple blocks south of where you are in Midtown.
Yep, that's right. And you're actually in an office.
I am in an office.
Wow.
I don't have a nice backdrop home office like you do.
Yeah, no, this is just it's a set, it's
Okay.
so, okay. You've been at KPMG 3 years now, a little bit more, I think. And most people have heard of KPMG, but I suspect there's some things that they don't know about it. Tell us a little bit about the KPMG today.
Yeah. So the answer to that is really what attracted me to be CMO at KPMG. So the company is truly fascinating, because it's got a really strong brand recognition for being part of the big 4 accounting firms, and is really well known in tax, in risk, in compliance areas. But beyond that, KPMG has incredibly strong technology and data and analytics capabilities that we're less known for, which is the story that my team gets to tell. And even beyond embedding technology and analytics into the capabilities of our audit and tax work, we have a massive consulting and deal advisory business where we join forces with leading technology companies through what we call alliance relationships. And these are tech giants like Google, Oracle, ServiceNow, Salesforce, just Workday, to name a few. And we are recognized as one of their top implementation partners. So we take our deep industry expertise, work in tandem with the tech companies as well as shoulder to shoulder with our clients and deliver on digital transformations. Actually, just today, don't know if you saw, but there was an announcement about KPMG and Google Cloud expanding our alliance to bring Google Cloud's innovations in Gen AI to the front. And there's just a tremendous and dramatic impact of Gen AI that we need to help our clients to navigate. And it's not really a question of if it will benefit them, it'll just be a question of how and how quickly. So it's really an exciting place to be. There's just a ton of capabilities at KPMG that we're not known for. I mean, I could go on for hours. We have strong capabilities in the Web3 metaverse space, an entrepreneur in residence program, just spun off a company from our KPMG studio called Cranium, which is a software solution that secures AI and machine learning technologies. We're all seeing a surge in that right now, but KPMG's been at that for a really long time. So it's a really just a really interesting marketing and branding challenge.
So, and it is a branding challenge because you've got, we'll just call it a legacy brand that's really well established and known for one thing. And so you're on the show because you led a big strategic initiative. Let's talk about that. And so, how do we get people or your target audience to recognize that there's this whole other part of KPMG they may not have known about?
Yeah, there's a big brand perception gap that we are trying to close. So we started about 2 years ago on a brand refresh effort and got to launch early in probably 22. We're looking at this effort as an enabler of our growth overall. So in that same time frame, we announced and began our front office transformation, which I've been knee deep in for some time now. So both the brand refresh as well as how sales and marketing work together and are enabled by technology. It's all really about amplifying growth and showing the many capabilities that the firm has. And what I get most jazzed about is how the brand and how we're seen in the market, that's really acknowledged internally to be critical to our growth agenda. And I think that's a big tailwind for marketing and for marketers. Just listening to the other two, Melanie and Grant, that's not always the case. And so that's really helpful. And not to say that we don't have challenges in perception or in gaining a seat at the table, but there is a lot of support for just the fact that marketing is a key growth enabler to a company.
And that's a transformation. So I mean, one of the things about a professional services firm is that your assets walk out the door every night. I mean, it's about the people. So if they don't understand the brand or don't have a sense of the brand or clarity around the brand and why it exists, it's a problem. So talk a little bit about it, because it sounded like, it sounded like part of this was to help your employees rethink how they thought about KPMG, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think our employees know the amazing capabilities that the firm has, and there's a constant effort to talk internally about the broader capabilities and technology solutions and innovation support that we provide. I think for us, it's our clients are aware of it, our employees are aware of it. It's more about that broader marketplace, and that's what we really are seeing in the research. Our clients, we have really strong and trusted relationships with, but it's that those prospects and those non-clients that really need to better understand what we do. And so we kicked off this effort, and just an interesting aspect of the dynamic at a company like KPMG is that we are a global brand, but we are member firms that are legally independent. So the ability to get a brand transformation done or a brand refresh is a tremendous amount of partnership and collaboration with our global CMO, Sam Burns, who is just amazing and I have a terrific relationship with. The big 8 member firm CMOs all have, really strong partnership relationship, but that's really how any real meaningful change will get made, because we are legally obligated to use the brand and all the brand guidelines that KPMG International has. So we all partnered together, locked arms, and did this as a global entity. We hired a brand agency. We developed a few different positionings. We did testing in 8 big markets. And that data, the results of that data by market, they weren't all consistent. And that really helped us to make a decision, and to let the data guide us in terms of what was the right decision. Although there was still a tremendous amount of debate and back and forth that took place between both the marketers and the business side. Just given the dynamics of a really big, complex organization like ours.
So was that the biggest? I mean, I'm just imagining this, it's like somewhat simpler in Grant and Melanie's case. There's one company, one brand, one owner, if you will, or some combination of that. Is that sort of the biggest challenge that you faced in all this, is just getting, this global buy-in?
I mean, the interesting thing is at what level do you communicate at that umbrella brand versus there's a tremendous amount of marketing activity that goes on and messages that get driven through different channels or for different audiences and for different purposes. But we had to keep revisiting, like, what are we trying to accomplish, which is how do you talk about unique capabilities and what ties 3 businesses together, audit, tax, and advisory, and what can kind of stand the test of time and also work across such diverse but complementary businesses that all sit underneath the KPMG umbrella.
Yeah, my mind is sort of exploding because there's so many matrices here. But I think that the thing that is clear from this process is the methodical nature that you had, the process of getting people to just sort of get where we're going, why this is good for the business, and bringing them into the process in order to get to conclusions that it could not have been easy.
Definitely not easy. I would say it requires a good amount of patience, for sure, persistence and collaboration amongst lots of different stakeholders across different time zones, and doesn't happen on the timeline that you or I ideally want it to, but nothing good gets done alone, as they say. And so I would say patience is a virtue, and I've learned that and practiced that throughout this.
Yeah, and that's such a hard thing, because I don't know a good CMO who recognizes patience as a value. I mean, it's just not
I hear you.
It's not in your nature. All right. Well, thank you for that. We'll come back to you and the whole group. We'll convene, but at this moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about CMO Huddles. Launched in 2020, CMO Huddles is an exclusive community of over 100 highly effective B2B CMOs who share, care, and dare each other to greatness. In fact, all we're thinking about is inspiring B2B greatness. That is the world of CMO Huddles. That is why we do this show. We hope you find inspiration out of it. Anyway, given how the hard things are getting out there, who doesn't need a little reassurance that they're not alone? Everything about CMO Huddles is designed to be a force multiplier, helping you to make faster, better, and more informed decisions. Since no CMO can outwork this crazy job, CMO Huddles is here to help you outsmart it. And that's the really interesting part. And I want to talk to Grant and Lauren and Melanie as you think about CMO Huddles, and in terms of, are there moments where you were able to take something that you got, whether it was in a huddle or in a recap or something, that inspired some action that you were able to sort of move the business forward? Melanie, you're shaking your head. Great, cool. Come on.
I mean, the most recent is probably on many people's mind, AI. You hosted a great AI session probably a month and a half ago with Noah, and it was just eye-opening. And I have since, engaged with him, and he's starting to train my team, and we're sending people to his first ever, New York-based day-long conference, so we can explore what does AI mean for the marketing team. That's an example.
Oh, that's so cool. By the way, tell them to look me up there because I'm interviewing Huddler, Tony Clayton-Hynett, at the thing to talk about that.
Fantastic. I will.
That's great.
I have
I'm
an
so happy to hear.
example.
Oh, Lauren.
So I mentioned our front office transformation, which is our implementation of both sales and marketing cloud from Salesforce. And there's just many different angles and components to that. And, the first question I'll always ask myself is, what's best practice? How do other people do this? What did others learn? And to just be able to reach out to a CMO community and ask for very specific parameters. I literally, I think, went to your assistant and said, I'm looking for people who have this MarTech stack and have done this in the last year. And she was able to give me 3 people who I then had really great conversations with, not just them, but they brought their key lieutenants on so that we could really get into the weeds and the details of it. And it was incredibly valuable to me and my team.
I love it. That's amazing. Yes, that's amazing. And so, Grant, you've been with us a long time as well. In various ways, and you've been so helpful on the one-on-one side advising. But I'm just curious if there's a circumstance where, in the last year or two, where something came through Huddles that really sort of helped you.
Yeah, I think it's hard to pick one. A couple of things, as you mentioned, the one-on-ones, and Lauren mentioned, like we're always trying something new. We're going to go into a small business segment or add a product or open a new vertical, and who else has done that, and what are the lessons they've learned in the pitfalls that we can avoid as CMOs. So that's been helpful, as well as the summaries that the CMO Huddles does, because sometimes I'll look at, like, I know that, does my whole team know that? So content marketing tips, or how to do the best combination of virtual and in-person events to build audiences, attendance, and pipeline. And so there's value in every huddle, and it's as much as about actively participating and seeking information. And as you said, it's quid pro quo. I'm happy to help others and share the insights and my lessons learned as well.
Which is really, it is great. And I thank you for that, because that is one of the ways that, it's one thing if you need help, but it's another thing to be able to give it to. So Huddles is grateful that you do that, and all of you do that. Anyway, if you're a B2B CMO who can share, care, and dare with the best of them and are ready to be inspired to greatness, check out CMOHuddles.com. Okay, so now let's all come back. Let's talk about one of the things in when you're first starting one of these initiatives. Are you top down, like get the CEO behind you, or bottom up? And if top down, how do you make sure it gets beyond the C-suite and so forth? So any thoughts on this methodology and process? Grant, you're shaking your head, so let's do it.
Yeah, it's one of these tips. I do a little bit of blogging, not as prolific as you, on CMOmentor.com. And one of the lessons I learned in these big strategic initiatives is my first tour of duty as a CMO is to get a couple of board members behind you, because you could be updating a board at a quarterly basis. Like, what the heck? Why are we going left? I thought we were going right. And so I found to get a couple of board allies that, it's great when you can meet in person, of course. And if they're behind you, the CEO gets even more supportive. If they're not, that's a different conversation.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting, and so it's obvious in one sense, because the CEO reports to the board. If the board is happy, great. If the board isn't happy, it's like, what'd you do? So yeah, cover your bases there. Okay. Melanie, or any thoughts
Sure.
on?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think it can go both ways. Top down, I talked about earlier, was top down. One of the, if you keep that, you mentioned, keeping that messaging in place for 6 years. Well, you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep moving it and all of that. And so, one of the things that I did was more bottoms up. It was more, grassroots up. And in that case, anyway, you have to build the case, and you have to make people feel it. And right, so you don't just think you got to market. You got to use your marketing skills, not just the data. The data sure is interesting, but when you're talking about changing a go-to-market, we evolved our purpose statement, for example. I mean, touching your purpose statement, but we had to. And I had to explain why, and I had to make people feel it. And the other piece I would say there is, as you're going through this, whether it's top down or bottom up, being able to draw a positive picture of what might be, what if, right? What if? Positive picture, not just what's wrong. So like Grant talked about a pretty major restructure. I mean, I bet you had to go with what if? What would it look like if we did it this way? It's positive, and that helps in both the top down and bottom up.
And when you talk about them feeling it, I'm curious, do you have a specific example of what that looks like?
Yeah, well, I mean, our current, not our current purpose statement, but I won't like explain it in detail, but our previous purpose statement was phenomenal. The whole company got into it, but they really got into it because of the outcomes it focused on. It called us something in the marketplace that put us in a competitive space that wasn't quite right. And as soon as you explain that, you get people's like energy going, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, yeah, I don't want to be there. That's an example. Like, okay, well, if you're going to aspire to be something different, you can't be in this space,
Right. So helping them see it. Lauren, as you're thinking about this top down, bottom up, I mean, you had a lot of that. You had top down, bottom, international, different countries. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to start top down, because especially at a company like KPMG and large, I mean, even, Melanie, you just talked about the purpose statement. I think when you start a large brand effort, which is what we were just, talking about for our case, there's a lot of it's not clear what we're talking about always. And we have to ensure that we are being clear, because when you talk about brand, you could also, move into the value space or the culture space, or are we changing the logo? What are we trying to achieve here? And what are the levers that we're going to pull to make that change? And I think if you don't agree on that top down, and it's not to say that it's a hard and fast in concrete and you can't change it, but you do need to make some of those key decisions up front, and then work really sideways. To your point, there's a tremendous amount of sideways work and bottoms up work to do, and then you got to go back to the top down to close it out and make sure that everybody's aligned.
I'm thinking, as a sort of follow up on this, there's always a naysayer somewhere, right? and there's this just sort of sitting on the sidelines going like this, oh, there goes marketing again, or whatever. I'm curious how you've sort of tried to bring some of the stragglers along, and how you sort of cajole them into going from skepticism, if you will, to embrace, or at least keep them from doing damage and undermining it. I'm curious if any of you have had that situation. You're shaking your head, Grant. Go for it.
Yeah, I won't name this person, but one of the business unit heads is like, he was freaking out. He's like, man, if I don't have dedicated marketing support, and the world's coming to a halt, Earth stops spinning. And I said, look, I've got to make the same number you've got to make, right? And I want to make sure that instead of a dedicated person, you have complete access to a wide range of individuals on marketing who are aligned for you to achieve, for the company to achieve its goals. So I had to reassure this person. It took a couple calls, and when you have to fast forward to once the change takes hold, it says, you were right, but I just couldn't see it at the time, right? Because it was such a a tough change to embrace, right? But that I had to bring them along.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of these situations, just in case, if their arms are crossed the entire time you're presenting, make a note of calling that person after the meeting. I'm just thinking about that. I'm also thinking about the Godfather quote, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. If they're like this, you just can't avoid it. You're just going to have to confront it sooner rather than later, it feels like. But Melanie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, identifying them and I mean, I'd say just listen closely, because there might be something there that will help the project. Either help the project generally, or help you sell it to others who you may not know about, who are feeling something similar. So there just may be something there, and you've got to be able to address it. Yeah.
Right. Even if you're just full guns ahead, you've just got to bring this person there. And what I love about, the listening, there might be something there. It's the old Bill Bernbach that they might be right. They might be right. And so if you can just let them know that you've listened and brought them with you. Okay. So I'm curious we started to talk about, so we're this broader theme of organizational buy-in. We mainly focus on getting to a big fork in the road and pushing a company in a new direction and bringing them along. And let's assume that you've got whatever it is, the new thing, the new brand, the new positioning, the new purpose. I'm just curious, what today, tactically, what media or methods or approaches have you done to sort of get the buy-in in again, on a broad level, and make it stick? And so any thoughts and things that you've done? I'm gonna start with you, Lauren, in terms of getting KPMG employees even more excited about this new direction.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a journey, and this will be an ongoing thing that we are going to be activating. But at the start of it, one of the key audiences obviously was employees, and getting them to be really excited about it and to want to be, I don't know about brand ambassadors, each of them, but really represent the brand and feel proud. And what we did was, in addition to things that you would probably expect, like videos or web portals or other things like that, to make them aware and have information available, we asked each of them to update their LinkedIn banner with our new brand positioning. And so what that did was, when you look collectively at all of our employees on LinkedIn, like, you can see this consistency, and we didn't have just one option. We had an array of options. But that was something that was really exciting, and I think really got people to want to show up in their professional environment with our new brand. There are other programs that we're looking to roll out that are about how we're storytelling, and about how people live the brand, in whether it's their client engagements or their communities or within the company on a day-to-day basis. And I think that will be really powerful as well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's 300,000, 400,000. I mean, how many employees are there globally? It's huge. It's a big number.
Yeah, around there globally.
So, okay, big number. And imagine suddenly all over this number of people have a new LinkedIn banner, and it's aligned. And but the key insight there, I thought, was that you had multiple versions. I bet very few brands would do that. They sort of have the one. But here you gave people a choice a little bit, so that they could wear, it's like they got to choose the t-shirt with the logo on it, or the polo shirt with it, but the color they wanted, right? So they could wear it a little more comfortably. I love that. It's a nuanced thing, but I think it's really, really smart. Grant, Melanie, anything to add in that, in sort of the rollout process?
Well, I'd evolve that employee engagement. We created a employee brand champion program where people signed up to be a brand champion. And that means that, yes, they're out there doing the social media, et cetera, but also we'd engage them in focus groups. So when we got far enough along, we'd bring that group together, and we still do that today in big projects, bring that group together to get some input from a broader group of employees.
Yeah, and it's so obvious, but it doesn't happen a lot. It's like you went to them to get their input at the beginning, and then you say, okay, we're off and running and we're rolling it out. But that's so smart that so now they're brand ambassador, and then you can use them as a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and giving them, empowering them a little bit more to shape the direction of the company. Amazing. So, let's see. Well, first, it's time for what would Ben Franklin say? Some words of wisdom before we go to your words of wisdom. And we've talked a lot about that. There's no heroism in being right in this role. There is a collectively getting to a place, and so I think what Franklin would say about this is he said, "Singularity in the right has ruined many." So thank you for that, Ben. So we're gonna kind of wrap up, and we didn't get as far as I had hoped, but we covered a lot of ground just the same. So if you're talking to a bunch of B2B CMOs, as you know, we do a lot in CMO Huddles land, who are struggling to get buy-in, give us, each of you, if you could, a couple of do's and a don't for getting organizational buy-in on strategic initiatives. And I think we'll start with Lauren, because you were last at the beginning. So first here.
So I would say my go-to is to have one-on-one conversations with people, and it will definitely, it's time consuming, and you really have to spend time and be willing to listen to what the objections are, and to not be, just immovable about your position. So you're getting their feedback because you want to evolve and get to a place where they will buy in and be an advocate and feel like they had a part in the process to develop it. So I always go to those one-on-one discussions as a way to really connect.
Got it. So we're these are people who are really important. We're going to sit down. We're not only going to listen carefully, but we're also going to incorporate their feedback. As Melanie said earlier, they might be right. Okay. With that, let's go. Grant, final words of wisdom.
I would do a combination of what both Lauren and Melanie have said. And it also depends if it's founder-led. As I've worked for pretty strong-willed founders, getting that person behind it, and it's so much easier to get the buy-in of the rest, especially if that's their management style. But if it's more consensus-driven, I'm not sure I have to get to everybody on the executive leadership team, but certainly one-on-ones with most of them makes a lot of sense. But the other thing is find those change champions, whether it's brand change or go-to-market change or whatever it might be. And they could be at various levels of the organization, but they're going to help make sure you keep momentum and it sticks.
Yeah, and I thinking about the first part of your thing is you do need to cover off anybody who has veto power, right? Anybody who could kill it. So that would be the one-on-ones for sure. And then the change champions is so interesting because your research will have identified those individuals because they will be excited about it. And then you're going back to them and empowering them. And so it's like you're training them to become the people who can then go and train everybody else in terms of what this new positioning or program might mean. Okay, Melanie.
Sure. So we've talked about the need to create or have a change mandate. I would say to do that must be based in the needs of the business. So if I just said we need to change our purpose, right? But we need to change our purpose. Why? Because we're going somewhere in our vision, our strategy that our purpose is not supporting. Okay, now there's something there. And to keep it positive. So to keep it grounded in the what if instead of the this doesn't work.
Yeah, the what if, where we're going. And I just want to emphasize this. You all in your role are really smart and have done this before and understand where you're going to get, and you know how the pieces are going to fit together. you're gonna need to bring people along with you. And the key that I heard there was helping them understand the why, and then painting the picture with the what if. All right. Thank you, Grant Johnson, Melanie, Marcus, Lauren, Boyman. You are great sports and great insights. I want to thank the audience for staying with us. Please join us in 2 weeks when we'll be talking about generative AI with Adri Gill-Miner, Chris Willis, and Andrew Bennett. Cue the music. CMO Huddles is produced by Melissa Caffrey. Our production assistant is Lauren Parkin. If you'd like to learn more about CMO Huddles, please visit cmohuddles.com. I'm your host, Drew Neiser. And until next time, keep on sharing, daring, and carrying each other to greatness.